I think this is an interesting non-hand call. And this is Tristan. Hello, Tristan. You're up next. What do you got for me here for a question?
It's just it's financial, somewhat poker related.
Okay.
So I was running into a situation where I'm relatively young compared to the rest of probably everyone who's on the site. I'm 22.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working a pretty mediocre job, and last year, through about 600 hours, I had been beating 2.5 for about 30-ish dollars an hour, a little over.
That's a pretty respectable win rate for a 22-year-old. I don't know if you have like a lot of experience playing on live, but that's a fairly respectable win rate. What's the cap in the buy-in game that you're playing?
So it's 2.5, 300 to 1,200. It recently just got raised to that.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was playing it, it was 2 to 1,000.
Okay. So
So
beating it for like, 6 to 7 big blinds an hour. Okay.
about, yeah.
Uh,
But last year I ran into some family issues where I was the only one that was able to provide for the family. So I was working 2 jobs, not having the ability to actually play because I'm working 70, 80, 90 hours a week
okay.
just to get by. And I mean, it resulted in me being about $8,000-ish in debt, just credit card debt,
Okay.
which isn't astronomical, but for 22, it's definitely not small.
And you find yourself right now with no bankroll or very limited bankroll?
My bankroll is non-existent at this point. I know I can beat the game, even if it's not for $30 an hour. It's still more than what my job pays me an
Uh-huh.
hour. So my question was more along the lines of, would you recommend getting debt paid off first before trying to get a roll started, whether it's a couple thousand, or you always advocate for short buying into games and doing this and that to kind of just get playing 2.5?
Yep.
Would you recommend getting a couple of, even if it's just 100 big blind poker, 100 buy-in or 100 big blinds, sorry, per buy-in, and just try to spin it up from there?
Well, I've thought about your question because I read this email. I was like, oh, this is very, very interesting because I think running my own business, I'm definitely self-taught when it comes to financial stuff. None of this stuff has been taught. I know that it's starting to creep its way into some curriculum in high school. It's like some of the most important things that you could ever need to know as an American specifically is like how interest rates work, debt, investing, thinking about simple like equity and math. None of this stuff is ever really even taught. And I didn't even really start thinking about this stuff until I started making money until, like I was maybe 30 or something like that. So right now and by the way, I'm not a financial advisor. I do have to give a caveat. I'm just going to roll into like credit card debt right now and compare that to like if somebody comes into money, where they would want to put that money. So right now, usually credit card debt is going to be variable. And for a guy like you that probably doesn't have that much of a credit history, I would imagine the juice that you are probably paying is at least 15%. People with bad, is that about right? If not more? Oh my, 25? Oh my God. Oh, wait, I might have to change my tune here a little bit. 25. All right, so obviously, anytime you come into money, say for example, somehow, Tristan, you came into like 5 or 10 grand. Let's say you came into the amount of money that was your debt. Okay. And people are like, I don't know what I want to do. And say you didn't even play poker. And I don't know what I wanted to invest this money. I didn't want to invest this money. You are never going to get anywhere near the type of return in the market, in real estate, in whatever, in Bitcoin, in whatever, than you'll get by avoiding paying the interest on your debt. This is part of what our country is going through. The best investment that you can make is to not pay that interest on your credit card. Okay. I mean, that's astronomical. I didn't know that it was that high. I thought it was going to be 14, 15%. Now, I want to tell you though, again, 25% is just insane. But I will tell you though, there is one way to look at this. There's a different way to look at this too. But it does come with a fairly large caveat as well, where first of all, you're really, really young. Okay. So there's a lot of times you can be very, very aggressive financially with your life roll. Now, you don't have dependents anymore. The situation has cleared itself up. Nobody's depending on you, I hope, right now. Is that right?
No, sir. I'm living on my own, but I'm with my girlfriend and a couple of roommates at the moment.
All right. So let's just go in thinking that you're just, you don't have kids. Nobody's really depending on you to make any money. You could actually look at this as a situation. And again, this is strictly for poker playing it. And I'm very conservative, but I'm just, telling this young guy how you could look at this situation, which would be you could look at his situation as almost like a backing deal where if you came into some money where you could play the game that you want to play instead of paying off your debt, you could look at it as a situation where if you lose your roll, you could look at it like a backer was saying, okay, if you go down to zero, you're going to owe me 25% extra in the end because you're not taking the money that you've come into and paying off your debt. So if you end up going bust and then you can't replenish, not only are you going down to zero, but I'm backing you, Tristan, and I'm going to charge you 25% extra. So let's say I was backing you. Let's just say you didn't have any debt. And let's just say, Tristan, I'm going to give you $8,000. And if you go down to zero, I'm going to cut you. And if you go down to zero, you owe me 25% also on top of what you lose. If you didn't have a roll and you thought that you could beat the game for $30 an hour, might you take that deal if you only owed 25%, like if you went down to zero?
That's a good way to phrase. I think I probably would.
Uh-huh. Now, the big caveat, though, and you are an adult now, Tristan, 22 is an adult, and you have to ask yourself this question because if the answer is yes to this question, then my advice is don't do it, is if you don't pay off this debt, if you come into some money or you spin it up or whatever, if your first priority is to not pay off this debt and you do go bust, my question to you, and you have to really ask yourself this, is that are you never going to pay off the debt? Meaning is it going to compound and you're eventually going to go bankrupt? Because that has a life-changing effect in your 20s. If you're going to be delinquent on this debt and then you have to go into bankruptcy, that's going to mean that that's going to live for 7-8 years. You're going to have a hard time, renting a place, forget about buying. You're never going to really be able to get a loan. So you have to kind of take a step back and say, okay, if I don't pay off this debt now and I concentrate on making some money, and then I take that money and I play poker with it, and somehow it doesn't go well, am I still going to pay off the debt, though, after I failed that poker, if that happens? Because if the answer is no, that you know that you won't pay off the debt, then all bets are off. I say pay off the debt, forget about poker, because I don't want you to ruin your life in your 20s. Do you follow what I'm saying? But that's a question that you have to answer yourself.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying.
So, I mean, that was really what your question was, right? You can gain some money from these types of jobs that you're doing, and then you can go in and sort of short buy and try to build the roll up, or you can go into some of these jobs and then pay off your debt first, right? And then maybe play poker down the line, right? Those are the options. Is that right?
Yes, sir. So it's mostly, should I save up 2,000, 2,500 and short buy for 100 big blinds and have 5 shots? And with the games that I'm playing, they're pretty soft.
Right.
But it's either that or just focus on getting the little over $8,000 paid off and then save up the money and actually start working on.
I'm going to put you on the spot because if I was ever backing you, I would hope, if you say you're a good poker player, then you would know the answer to this question. And by the way, the question that I'm going to ask is not that hard, and I bet you 95% of the general population wouldn't be able to do it in their head. But if you're a good poker player, you should. So if you have $8,000 in debt at 25%, right?
Mm-hmm.
How much does that debt cost you in 6 months?
It's going to cost me $9,000.
Well, how much is How much is it? I think you're on to it. You just didn't say it the right. How much is the cost of the loan after 6 months? The interest.
Oh, the interest will be 1,000.
Good. Hey, you knew that right off the bat. Yes. So it costs you $1,000 to not pay off this debt, right? After 6 months. So do you think that cost, knowing that cost, would you still, is it possible that is an acceptable cost for your opportunity cost to make money in poker over that period of time?
I do think so.
I mean, if you can get in the hours, right, at more than $30 an hour.
Because I mean, the way you're phrasing it, it would make sense for me to kind of do that because I still will be working. I'll just have my Friday, Saturdays, my Wednesday evenings blocked off for poker.
Here's the thing. And this is kind of like a David Ramsey type of thing. I mean, David Ramsey gives like good general sort of financial advice for people that just don't understand number. But I know just even by the fact that you knew the answer to that question right off the bat, you're like ahead of the game in terms of finances and equity. But he always says, don't go into debt. The very first thing that you should do is pay off your debt. And for most people, that's going to be true. For the most part, he does some crazy stuff where he's like, you should pay off your. Like I said, for 80-90% of the population, his advice is sound. The problem that I have with him is like telling somebody to pay off like their mortgage at like a fixed 2.9% 30-year rate when the interest is tax deductible, when they can take cash and make 5.3% in interest right now. Why would you pay off a 2.9% mortgage, which real cost after the tax deduction is like 2%? You're making 3% if you can get 5% in the bank, right? But again, for usually what ends up happening is people just continue to compound their debt. So I think 25% is an astronomical APR for a credit card. I mean, we established that. However, if you can answer my question about you really saying to yourself that if it doesn't work out, I'm not going to go into delinquency with my debt, then you can work out the numbers. I know you can, you're capable, where you look at a time period of what that interest cost is going to be over a certain time period, and you very well could come up with the answer, even at a 25% APR, that you will make more money by playing poker than paying off the debt right now. It's all a numbers thing, Tristan. But you do have to have that hard conversation with yourself.
Okay.
So I hope that helps.
It did. I appreciate it, Bart.
All right. Thank you very much for the call.